Greetings all, welcome to Everything Borrowed, where we sit down to share stories and have conversations with entrepreneurs to artists and everyone in between. Today's episode is powered by Blake's Hard Cider, 100% fresh pressed, all natural and gluten-free, straight from our family's 75-year-old farm in Southeast Michigan. Find us in your local grocer or have Blake's direct ship to your home by visiting blakestore.com. Use promo code EverythingBorrowed to receive 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years of age. Please enjoy mindfully. My guest today is Rabbi Elimelech Goldberg, otherwise known as Rabbi G. Kids Kicking Cancer was created in 1999 by Rabbi G, a black belt rabbi and clinical assistant professor of pediatrics. Rabbi G lost his first child to leukemia at the age of 2 and brings a wealth of personal experience and sensitivity to the topic of dealing with children and families facing life-threatening illnesses. This program, which began with a handful of children at Children's Hospital of Michigan, now teaches over 7,000 children in 90 hospitals across 7 countries. The most unique and powerful element of the model is that each child becomes a teacher to others. Kids Kicking Cancer's mantra is power, peace, and purpose. When asked what is your purpose, the children yell out, to teach the world. I hope you guys enjoy. Rabbi Goldberg, how are you?
Everybody calls me Rabbi G.
Rabbi G, I like that better. If that's okay, I'll call you that.
That's cool.
Thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us today.
Pleasure.
Jason told me that long time ago that you were actually his principal. I don't want to date you at all, but Jason Brown, a dear friend of mine, and it sounds like he was one of your students.
Not as a principal, but as a teacher.
As a teacher, okay.
And I was younger than him at the time, actually. So I was just very advanced.
Yeah, right. So excited to have you on. As you know, the podcast not only talks about, the Everything Borrowed concept is, not only sharing from one another in entrepreneurialism, business, life, but also, the spiritual side of things. And was very excited to have you on because, I'm actually, have through Jason have heard a lot about, Kids Kicking Cancer and, the journey that you've been on. And I know you, learning and reading up on you, I know that you have a personal connection to kids and cancer. I was wondering if you could share your story and how it all really began, the origin story of it.
Sure. My first teacher in the world of pediatric oncology was our first daughter. A week before her first birthday, she was diagnosed with leukemia, which today is a very treatable children's illness. It wasn't the same thing in 1981. She was an amazing little trooper. At 2 years old, at a bone marrow transplant at UCLA, she would tell the docs, no medication today, please, and tell the 5-year-old kids not to cry. A number of years after she passed away, I found myself directing a camp for kids with cancer in Upper New York State. Those of your listeners who are familiar with geography know that New York is very close to the United States. And I came upon this 5-year-old child who was having his port accessed for his chemotherapy. In the old days in medical school, we used to teach that there's a pain trigger in the brain. Today we know it's all neuromatrix, which means that if someone's afraid, if they're angry, if they're upset, the actual pain message, what we call the nociception of the pain, goes up significantly. So I see this kid, he's being held down by 2 large nurses. A third nurse has a large syringe to plunge into his chest. And this child was screaming something awful. He's going to have a horrific experience. Mm-hmm. And it was so counterintuitive to me. I just yelled, wait, and they all stopped. Even the kids stopped screaming. They looked at me and I didn't have a clue what I was going to say next. I just said to the nurses, give me 5 minutes with this child. And they were happy to leave. And the kid looked at me like I was the governor. I just stayed his execution. And I got closer to this child and I said, I'm a black belt, which doesn't mean anything to a little kid. So, wow. He said, you want me to teach you some karate? He almost jumped off the table. Explained to him in the martial arts, you learn that pain is a message. You don't have to listen. You could breathe in this amazing chi, this energy, and push out the pain. Watch me. And 5 minutes later, we're doing a simple Tai Chi breathing technique. 20 minutes later, they pulled the needle out. He looked up at the nurse and he said, did you do it yet?
Wow.
And that's when Kids Kicking Cancer was born.
That's amazing. And, I want to stay on the Kids Kicking Cancer, kind of tracked because, there's such a story there to uncover and to talk about. But, I find that interesting. I personally do acupuncture. And even in that capacity, you talk about, the deep breathing and kind of the deep relaxation, and you really can physically, negate pain in some manners, as in my own experience, through those mechanisms. So it's interesting. So not only are you a rabbi, not only are you, advised medically, but you're also a black belt, karate black belt?
It's a Taekwondo, which is the derivation of Taekwondo, but we have hundreds of martial arts therapists across the globe, everything from Bagua to Tai Chi to karate, Taekwondo, Shotokan, you name it, we got it.
That's amazing.
The common element is the martial arts is about that inner light, that real spiritual sense, being able to create a flow and not be defeated.
I love that. And I wanted to kind of talk to you about the way in which, your spirituality and, Judaism has kind of played into, this path of kids kicking cancer. And I want to talk a little bit because I always find it interesting as people who are into martial arts, and, it's defense and it's combat, but it's really not. It's really the inner working is really where the work's done. And I was wondering if you could just speak on your experience with that, because in my short time talking to you here, you're already one of the most interesting people I've talked to in a while. So I'm curious to hear your perspective.
I appreciate that. As a rabbi, I hang around with other people with skull caps.
Yeah.
This is a gentleman I was teaching our Power of Peace Purpose bow to at the Vatican.
Wow.
He's the guy with the white skull cap. And after I taught him and I was talking about the children of kids kicking cancer, he grabbed my arm and he brought me close and he said, "Please have the children pray for me." So it was very cool coming from Pope Francis.
That's great.
But the ideal of the real essence of a person's self, we can easily become distracted by our body. And then we become our body. We can easily become distracted by our pain or by all types of tendencies where the brain kind of grabs us. We get into those addictive loops and obsessiveness, etc. And these are all things that we teach. I also have an appointment in the medical school, so I teach the medical side of the medicine side of this from a scientific viewpoint. I'm not a doctor, but I use a lot of big words. I don't know what they mean, but I do lecture in the world of pain management and end-of-life care for children. So the essence of the martial arts and the essence of a person is the realization we're not just an amalgam of bones and organelle and tissue. There's something to our essence. We call it the soul. In the martial arts, they talk about, in Korea, ki, in China, chi. In the Philippines, we call it tenaga dalam, or prana in India. It doesn't matter what you call it. Being able to access that inner light and actually push out. So where the soul is controlling the body rather than the body controlling the soul. And what's really cool about the program, and I'll teach your listeners the bow that I just taught to Pope Francis before COVID, is power, peace, purpose. That means no matter what we face in our lives, we can bring in this amazing energy and push out pain, fear, and anger. If we ask the thousands of kids we work with across the globe, what's your purpose? They allow to teach the world, because every one of our kids becomes a teacher. So feeling that light and knowing there's a purpose to what we go through is absolutely transformational.
That's amazing. And I have to imagine that, you're kind of constantly learning from your students. And, I recently joined my local school board in an attempt to kind of give back to the school that's taught me a lot. And I always look at there's real fundamental, spiritual lessons and kind of life lessons to be learned from children. And I have to imagine in this Kids Kicking Cancer that you have been wowed and amazed with some of the experiences that you've seen, in doing the work that you do. And I was wondering if you had, some lessons and philosophies that you've been able to take away that the kids have shared with you in your over 20 years experience.
Absolutely. I actually wrote a book.
You did?
You go on Amazon and look up Elimelech Goldberg, Elimelech, Goldberg. You'll find it. The name of the book is A Perfect God Created an Imperfect World Perfectly. There are 30 life lessons from the children of kids kicking cancer, and there are 30 meditations that are placed within it with QR codes. So we tell the reader, if you don't know what a QR code is, here's a website. And if you don't know what a web link is, then you probably don't have any stress. You don't need the book. but in it, it's the lessons of the children that dominate. I'll share one thought, a lesson I learned from an 11-year-old young man by the name of Bernard Johnson. There's a group in Michigan, actually a national group, like the Lions, like the Rotary, that might be a little bit more famous. There's a group called the Optimists. There's a whole group called the Optimist Club. And there's probably a pessimist group. Those are optimists with experience. But the optimists make this great party for our kids. At the end of the party, it was December of 2018. At the end of the party, Bernard asks to speak. And he's wheeled in his little wheelchair by his twin sister, Brittany. And Bernard gets the microphone, and in a loud voice, he says, "Hi, my name is Bernard." And everybody stops to look at that little kid in the wheelchair. And he says, "I want to thank you, optimists, for making such a great party. I want to thank Kids Kicking Cancer. You guys are our family. But I want to teach you what they teach us at Kids Kicking Cancer. And that is that no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in this light and blow out the darkness." And he proceeds to teach our trademark breath break, how to use the breath to relax the body. And the most beautiful smile on his face, he says, "Remember, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light, blow out the darkness." Then they gave me the microphone. I had to take a breath break myself, because we all knew that Bernard's mother ran away when he was a baby. His dad died when he was 8 years old. His uncle died when he was 9 years old. And that was the year he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor that was slowly stealing any movement from his body. With his one good hand and the most beautiful smile, this 11-year child is telling everybody there, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light, blow out the darkness. So after taking my own breath break, I said to the audience, I want you to know that Bernard Johnson just defined optimism. But optimism does not mean that everything is going to be great. Optimism means that we can respond to everything with greatness.
I like
And
that.
that's what the children of Kids Kicking Cancer and our Hero Circle teach all over the planet.
That's amazing. And I have to take a breath break there, because that's powerful and truly amazing. You know, when you think about this idea of, you know, the breath and taking in the good and letting out the bad, and, you know, this kind of philosophy, it obviously seems very rooted in meditative practices. And is that rooted from, you know, Judeo-Christian kind of philosophy of meditations? Is it kind of on the Eastern side? Where did you fall into this kind of, you know, breath work philosophy? Is this something very rooted in your religious and spiritual pursuits, or how'd you come about it?
I was a pulpit rabbi for 20 years. Nobody put people to sleep as well as I did when I spoke. So I'm really good with that.
Yeah.
But people make a mistake, and they think that meditation is something that is significantly or originally Buddhist. And really, in the Judeo-Christian philosophy and stream of thought, really what meditation is enhanced relaxation. The ability to calm one's mind. In Hebrew, the word for happiness is sameach, which literally is a combination of two words, sam moach, where you put your brain. There's a constant pull from the amygdala, the lower parts, the anxiety, the thrill seeking, the this, the that, and what if, and we live in those worlds of what if. The prefrontal cortex becomes strained. The pyramidal cells that connect to right up here, they become strained in the process of stress. We teach people how to identify that you're stressed, and you could feel it. Everybody's got their spot. I tell and I give these seminars to major executives and companies across the globe. Even though I left the active rabbinate, my greatest joy in life is to hear myself speak. So do a lot of that. The opportunity to identify stress, if you pick up your phone and your arm gets tight, that's either because your phone's too heavy, probably an Android, or because you notice caller ID and somebody's hitting your trigger. We have all these stress triggers in our brain. And if you feel tightness and you're not lifting weights, you're having a stress response.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to identify that and then use the breath. Breathing is the only part of the autonomic nervous system that's so easily controlled. When you use your breath, and we do a particular somatic breathing where the breath is coupled with movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really simple. So we teach this really literally across the planet to different companies, and they generously help support kids kicking cancer. But when you teach that breath break, and we've trademarked it, and I've gotten to fight many times in the airports. Sir, I saw you breathing. We have the trademark. You have to now pay kids kicking cancer. I wasn't breathing. You were breathing. It's really hard to legislate that or litigate that.
Right.
But let me tell you, let me share with your listeners how powerful this can be to calm the brain. So the mantra, power, peace, purpose, that you can bring in this light, create this inner peace. And when we talk to our children, we ask them, what's your purpose? They yell out, to teach the world. Every one of our kids becomes that teacher. So when we talk about power, peace, purpose, and we connect children with audiences, that's how I got to the Pope, by the way. I was teaching a group of Pfizer executives in New York City with a number of children who are patients of ours from Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital, the famous cancer hospital. And they called me from Rome 3 days later. Would you come to Italy to teach Pfizer Italy how to do your breath break? I was happy to do that. They got so excited. We're now in 14 hospitals in Italy, including Bambino Gesù Hospital, which is the Vatican Children's Hospital, Baby Jesus Hospital. So I thought it was like really super cool that an Orthodox rabbi needed permission from the Pope's office to teach a meditative technique to Vatican children. and he gave it. This was even the previous Pope Pius. But the concept that these children teach the world is amazing. So we wanted to see, Andrew, how deeply can we affect people with a lesson from these children? And so we identified a group of adults. We train children, we train adults.
Mm-hmm.
Just with adults, we talk slower. But we identified a group of adults with my colleagues at the DMC and at Wayne State University who were heroin and fentanyl addicts in the methadone clinic. And we got a grant from the state of Michigan to create a virtual reality where the user is surrounded by the children of kids kicking cancer. And in the beginning of the VR, the person, and of course VR is very immersive,
Mm-hmm.
is surrounded by these beautiful children, about 8 of them. And they're teaching how to use the breath break, how to use the breath to breathe in the light and to push out the darkness and all of that. And then they say, if you can do this, you can help children around the world have less pain. Because when you do it, you're thanking them and giving them purpose. Can you do it for them and for us? All of a sudden, it fills a picture of thousands of kids. And then when the children teach the SUDS patient, the substance use disorder patient, that everybody fights against a beast. And if you could identify the beast, you can defeat the beast. And they choose a child who takes them backwards to the optic nerve into their own brain. All of a sudden, a person's in the synaptic universe. And we explain to them that science tells us today, you can change your brain. You can change your brain. Brings them down to the limbic system, where the source of what we call mesolimbic dopamine pathway is, vitae nucleus accumbens, for your 6th graders out there who are studying neurobiology, and brings them down there and says, if you can identify your beast, you can change your life. And all of a sudden, the limbic system twirls and turns into a beast and says, what are you doing with these kids? Get rid of them. They're nothing to you. I'm everything. And the beast has the multiple drug affect and artifacts. You love me. There's nothing else in your life. Get rid of these kids. And the child appears next to the beast and says, your beast is a liar. You can breathe in the light and defeat your beast. And when the user lifts their head up in the breath break, it fills with light. When they blow out, they can see this dark cloud coming out of their mouth, and it makes holes in the beast. And the beast begins to shrink and shrink. And it's a very dramatic battle. And then it finally washes away in a waterfall meditation. And we have found, using functional MRIs, that after 12 weeks, we've changed the brains of drug addicts. We've literally had people walking on the streets of Detroit to get their fix of heroin, get a message from the children, time for your breath break, on their phone, do the breathing, and walk away from the drugs. Thank the children. By the summer, God willing, we'll have a developed breath break app. When everyone takes their breath break, they'll be able to thank the children. Every breath break that Andrew Blake takes in Michigan will go as thousands of rays of light to children around the planet, thanking them.
That's amazing. And I think it's so empowering. I think, having, been around addiction and mental, disease, in my life and seeing people, I think it's such an empowering thing to know. And I think the science is starting to support that there is neuroplasticity. There is an ability to change the way in which your brain works and functions. I think for so long, there was a stigma that, your brain's broken or that it's a certain way and it's genetics or it's that. And I think it's such an empowering thing to know that there is, there is a process in which you can go through, spiritually and otherwise to remedy, those ailments. And I think that's so empowering. And it's beautiful that you guys are reaching so many people with that. So in your 20-year history, do you know how many people, it might be millions at this point, but how many people you've
So we have a goal of empowering 1 million children by the end of 2025.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we started with 10 children at the Children's Hospital in Michigan in 1999 in one little place. And now we see children in 103 facilities in 7 countries. And we're going to spread to that 1 million.
And the work's just getting started.
Hear about it, and the more people respond to it, and obviously we need the funding to do that. But so getting the word out is very much appreciated.
Of course.
What we do is actually really simple, but the impact on the children is so significant because these children become teachers. And I'll share with you, if I may,
please,
that you're on the school board. So we work with a school district that borders Detroit called Oak Park.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into that school district and we created an entire curriculum for children called the Hero Circle curriculum. It's really cool. It has these amazing videos every week. It's taught by black belt martial artists. We explain to the kids, if you do this, you're helping kids who are sick across the world. We have children in Africa. We installed routers in Zimbabwe and Zambia this past summer because there are children there without pain medication. We are their pain medication.
Mm-hmm.
So we tell the children in Oak Park, you can help those kids. So rather than going into a district that might have underserved children and say, hey, we've got this great program for you, we go in and we ask these kids, we need you. Could you do us a favor? There are these kids who are in hospital sometimes for months, going through all types of challenges, and all by themselves. If you can do the breath break that they do, you'll make them, could you do this for them? And then we've created in the Oak Park schools an entire culture of this. Dr. Jamie Hitchcock, who is the superintendent of schools, sat with me in the middle of the program to tell me, Rabbi G, I have a problem with your program, which you don't want to hear from the superintendent of schools. I got a little nervous, did a breath break. I said, oh. And she says, yeah, I want to know why it's not in every one of my schools right now. So we created a childhood resilience initiative. I told you, you got to put your money where your mouth is.
That's right.
You got to join this. Yeah. So she's now co-chairing it with Bridget McCormick, who is the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. And Chief Justice McCormick joined our board because of this and said, I have been in the criminal justice system and seen it and seen the role of mental illness. This is an upstream solution to the classroom to prison pipeline. We got to do this. So just this past week, she sent a note to the governor, and we're starting to talk to policy people, because for the entire state of Michigan, and beyond that eventually, to begin a day with power, peace, purpose, to know that they can help other children, to learn this self-regulation. What we do that's so unique, Andrew, is that every person in that building, whether they're the police officers, the custodians, the teachers, the admins, rather than teaching the children, they're learning from the children how to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. When kids come back to school and there's a new teacher and the teacher's again says, take your breath break, time for your breath break. And it's so cool because you can self-regulate, and they have now turned to us. There's a whole group of ACE master teachers, whole group of learning and teaching about adverse childhood experiences. But how do you deal with it? So there are many wonderful groups, meditation and yoga.
Mm-hmm.
We've cross-trained with yoga specialists. Personally, I find yoga a bit of a stretch, but that's just because they have a bad sense of humor.
That was a good one. That was good.
but the whole, thank you, sir. But the whole idea is that
if you weren't a rabbi, you could be a stand-up comedian. You're pretty good.
I am
sharp.
But the whole idea, Andrew, is that the children become teachers.
Yes.
And that's so impactful.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you. There's a martial arts component, or originally does everyone who teaches this program you're rolling out, are they connected to a martial arts in some way? Is that a prerequisite to become a trainer?
Most of our therapists are black belts.
Okay.
But however, we train volunteers and others to walk into the hospitals. We go into the hospital, we train the staff how to do this.
Right.
But again, the key is that when we mention that this is what's done in the martial arts,
mm-hmm.
it's a vector into the kids' heads. Why? Because if you talk to children about health and their welfare and their citizenship, and their brain, that PFC is not developed yet.
Right.
It's not myelinated. The
right.
dendrites have not been pruned yet. So you don't have a functioning prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, the anxiety, that's really precocious. The prefrontal ain't there yet. So, telling a kid why it's not a great idea to stand on the hood of the car going at 35 miles an hour requires the knowledge that that is not just a little adult. It's
mm-hmm.
a kid who doesn't process danger in the same way.
Sure.
And thrill and depression and anxiety. And that's why there's so much challenge today with resilience. The fact that we talk about martial arts, even though there are a lot of kids who don't want to do the punching and kicking, which is fine. And we're a non-contact martial arts program because so many of our kids have very challenged bones because of the chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no contact, but there's 1,000% contact with the soul and the imagination and the light of the child. When I was in Florence in Italy, they brought me this 12-year-old girl, and she'd just been diagnosed, terrible diagnosis, really depressed, surgery the next day, feeling sick, but her English was good. So they brought her to me. And her mom was there and her doctor was there. And I told her right away, I said to her, I have an agenda. I'm looking for people who are going through really tough stuff because they're the best teachers. There's so many kids in pain in this hospital. And there are a lot of adults in pain. And they look at you and what you're going through. If you could breathe in the light and blow out the darkness, you can change this whole world. And all of a sudden her face lit up like there was a purpose for what she was going through. We did a meditation, Andrew, for 13, 14 minutes. She opened up her eyes. I asked her how she's feeling. Her face was filled with light. The Felizimo, we're feeling fantastic.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Her mom and her doctor were in tears. I was pretty much too. I try not to cry in front of the kids unless they're crying.
Yeah.
But I didn't do anything. I just allowed this little girl to know there's a light within her and there's a purpose of what she's going through.
That's beautiful. And I think that one of the reasons why, your work is becoming more and more, I guess, I'm learning about it more. I'm hearing more and more people talk about it. I think it's growing. I believe, CNN even dubbed you, one of their heroes. That's a huge accomplishment. What was your reaction to that? And I know the work's just getting started, but it has to feel good to know that not only at the kid level you are making progress, but in the culture you're beginning to really spread this message beyond just our local reach.
When I was one of the top 10 heroes at CNN, which is really cool, I have to admit. 35 million people, not a bad gig.
No.
First it was CNN, the 35 million, then being Andrew on your show. It keeps getting
better. I know.
It's getting better and better. There's no doubt about it. But I brought with me a young lady who had such a rough life, and she never knew her dad. Dad kind of disappeared before she was born, and all types of challenges. And this young lady, I did a meditation with her when she was in an MRI, which she normally had to be anesthetized for, and she hated that because she woke up nauseous and killed her day. We did a meditation for an hour and 10 minutes. I was over the speaker going into that MRI, hunched over a nurse who was down below me, working the controls or something. And when she came out and you saw her face, it was so beautiful because she didn't need any anesthetics. But more importantly, she knew she was teaching the world. When she and I got up to receive that award, and it was her reward, it's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a tall, good-looking face in front of the organization. It's not mine. When she got up, she whispered in her ear, she says, I know someplace my dad is watching me and he's proud.
How can people connect with you spiritually and get involved in what you're doing on a Kids Kicking Cancer level, or even in their own spiritual exploration? And probably more importantly, how can we help support, and how can we get involved on a financial level or a dedication of our time level? What can we do to get more connected with the work you're doing?
Definitely be in touch with us.
Yeah.
info@kidskickingcancer.org is great, or me directly, Rabbi G @kidskickingcancer.org. We just began a 5-year campaign to literally reach those 1 million children. It's a $35 million campaign. Our goal is to become a standard of pediatric care. So the more clinicians who get involved, the more that people are sharing this with children in pain. The number one thing that you could give us are more children in pain, to allow those children to become teachers of the world. Number two, donations. We live off of that as we're growing our sphere of influence. We have some wonderful volunteers, hundreds of them across the planet. But because it's a very clinical program, we also need professionals and social workers and psychologists. And there's a MD, PhD who works with us, et cetera, who really knows what those big words that I say mean. So the goal is to make as many friends, to be introduced to as many groups, to spread that word. Those people who would go on Amazon.com, for a perfect God created an imperfect world perfectly. It also, in Italy, it's available in Italian. But
oh wow, you're international.
Yeah, the spelling is terrible. I'm joking. But the key really is to everyone to realize, no matter what you're going through in your life, you become a teacher. It's natural to respond to things that's depressing, COVID, job loss, economic challenges, depression, mental illness, and frankly, unfortunately, we're going to lose more children to suicide than to the coronavirus because of these times. The more that we can realize that everyone is watching you. When you're down, when you're depressed, it's natural to be angry, and that defines you. But if you realize, no, I'm not angry, I'm experiencing anger, and this is a great opportunity to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And I'll show your listeners just very quickly how we do our breath break. You kind of rub your hands together, get the energy flowing, get your hands like a cup, like you're holding a ball mid-navel, your shoulders a little bit forward, your chin down. And as you breathe in through your nose preferably, feel your hands pull up up, your shoulders, your chin. Watch me going all the way up to the top. Hold that for 3 days. I'm sorry, for 3 seconds, 3 seconds. Then as you breathe out, now through your mouth, you're letting everything fall, your shoulders, your chin, your chest. At the end, you push out more. So the breath is like a wave. You're going up, then down. But here's the key. Here's the real important part. The martial arts were very focused on imagery. If before you break a board or a brick, you have to see it break in your head. If you see your hand break, not a good idea to do it. The ability to imagine as you're breathing in this amazing energy, this light coming up and up and up, and hold that, and then not to blow out the light, but the darkness. As you breathe out, see that dark cloud come out of your mouth and push down on it and push it down and down and push it out. The more you can breathe in and out and create that wave of breath. Again, this summer we'll have an app for everybody to use to do it and to thank the children of Kids Kicking Cancer. But it's still pre-publication on that. We're working on finishing that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man and truly an amazing human and individual, and I can't wait to learn more from you and follow all that you're doing, and hopefully our paths cross again. But I truly applaud the work you're doing, and hopefully we can introduce this work to people in need through this podcast, and look forward to following up with you soon. And best of luck in all the work you're doing. And am I doing it right? Power, peace, purpose. Thank you, Rabbi G. God bless you.
Listeners, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great one. Bye. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find Everything Borrowed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Show your support and drop a 5-star review to help more people find our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox, Jason Brown, and Vox Adams. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is by Adam Yarborough. Everything Borrowed is an After Hours Media production. Copyright 2021.